We're gonna sure hope so. We got a good evening, everybody, and welcome back. We have a lot of headlines from around the world, from the White House to the Kremlin, from the House of Windsor, direct to your house from around the world. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Um, Headlines for what was 3-1 as portions of the globe now enter 3-2, 2022. I have 7 pages of notes, but I'm going to try and really stay on target with the notes that came through, the data points. There may or may not be headlines that may or may not be trusted from various reliable news sources. All of you, I beg of you, I implore upon you, you need to do your own research. There's an argument that there might be, a playbook of how people behave when certain things happen and using that playbook for good or for evil. And, from Sun Tzu, The Art of War, let's take a look at the data points and the headlines and see what we get and where they might be going. What were initial accounts for approximately 36 hours of a 17-mile convoy, approximately 17 miles from now Kiev and Kyiv. I'm going to say Kiev the rest of this broadcast. In the end, tell you what the media is saying, unless you've already heard the Conspiracy Keepers, where I brought that up today as well. Follow that on YouTube with Joe Monaco at the Conspiracy Keepers, Joe Monaco on his YouTube page. Follow me in all these headlines and these data points on the Twitter feed, the Scooter McGee, or on Facebook as Scooter McGee. If you are liking this, please hit like, please share it, because shadow banning sucks. And if you get anything out of this, maybe you could forward it to somebody else who could use a little, hey, here's a couple of data points you might not be aware of. The 17-mile convoy turned out to be 40 miles long. And the Western media is just not understanding why it's not doing anything. The logistical problem of running a blitzkrieg operation and things like food, water, and if all of the things I'm going to say are going to be based on if what they're reporting is true. If the number of casualties and wounded by Russian forces is true, a lot of logistical issues. If the stories are true regarding the destruction of the armored personnel carriers and the tanks and the numbers that they're alleging, bigger problems. If the talk of the use of the term Iron Curtain regarding a quarantine embargo and a stronghold on the Soviet Union, Russia, Mother Russia, to prevent travel out, economic in, what's going to happen to the Russian tea room in New York City? Shh. Continued calls of boycott of Russian businesses, Russian vodka, but the numbers of how much vodka is actually imported from Russia here and not a Cuban, because most of the Cubans are counterfeit. Go to Havana, get a Cuban. And that, The good ones go elsewhere. But Iron Curtain being brought up again, but redefining the word. Some reports out of St. Petersburg, Moscow, and elsewhere inside Russia are suggesting the Russian people are actually suffering now more from these sanctions from global leaders in full support of the international community and thanking for the knowledge and the wisdom, and these sanctions are going to hurt the elite. We're going right after the top. We're going for the head of the, if the initial accounts are true, regarding the sheer volume of people in the streets now in Russia who are, give it 72 more hours, because once the money is gone, now starts the breakdown of society. The ATMs are out of money, the lines at the banks, the inability, the ruble continues to just plummet. And what is interesting may have been the wrong word. What is fascinating is all of this rhetoric and the attacks of the top, and it's the middle class, the lower class, and even those who think they're of the upper echelon and having money are suddenly realizing they can't go to the ATM and get their money. And there's no money in the ATMs, and there's a run on the banks. And this was the other interesting, fascinating, because we don't do this here in the United States. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, elsewhere, having the ruble in their hand and trying to exchange it for other currency, an American dollar, a European dollar, a British note, a Canadian, trying to exchange their money because, can't compare with Germany, even though the Russians love talking about the Nazis in control of the Ukraine. The wheelbarrows full of money in a Weimar Republic is different from what may happen now in Mother Russia, with the sanctions going after the oligarchs. Because initial reports, if true, don't seem to be working. What was going to be requested from President Biden to the Congress to approve $6.5 billion in humanitarian aid, weapons, and other essentials for the people of Ukraine has now jumped to $10 billion. And in the State of the Union notes, we'll get to that. The Russian convoy that was reported 17 miles outside of Kiev and was 17 miles long is now 40 miles long because of logistical issues and/or this is about quarantining cities. This isn't about a massive invasion. The shock and awe is getting a little better based on the size of weapons that are being detonated, but we can't even confirm which side's detonating them. How do we know it's not the CIA now playing around over there in the backyard? What is clear, as everyone seems to be amazed at the strength and the pride of the Ukrainian people, is the reality that the Russian propaganda, even to the Russian soldiers and to the people elsewhere, the propaganda is just failing in real time. As is allegedly the credibility of national intelligence and how it's being shared in real time. That's not what you do when you're fighting your enemy. And you, even the enemies and partner, we're going to partner with peace and we're going to negotiate. No, we negotiate surrender. That's what they're doing. What is also interesting is the Russian Air Force, planes and helicopters, for the volume of them that are in the region, they are still largely being unused, suggesting something much larger. The agreement now popping on the radar of the former Soviet Union as Belarus adopted a new constitution that no longer has it be a nuclear-free state. The former Soviet Union, Russia, signed an agreement with Azerbaijan. Belarus to the north, Azerbaijan back to the south and the west. East, south and east, excuse me. And Azerbaijan allegedly tying and siding with Russia in these agreements. And I bring up the Azerbaijan versus Belarus because Moldova suddenly got thrown into the headlines of where the invasion is going to be next. So is Moldova now being drawn in as a cast member in this, global theater and puppet show or show, depending upon which way it's going to go? Allegedly, sources in the FSB inside the Kremlin in Moscow alleging that a Chechen hit squad has been sent to kill Zelensky. Well, if we're actually at war and the commander-in-chief, anyone up and down the line we killed Yamamoto, for Christ's sake. Don't tell me it's not off the table while the ridiculous nonsense continues about nuclear war. And when Zelensky continues to be out in public and show his face on Instagram and social media and do videos and say hello and champion the fight, well, you're an open target. And I'm not going to bring up snipers again because I don't want to put it out there in the universe, and you can listen to the other night show about snipers. So, the Western media now, as the local news has the Ukrainian crisis 7 minutes into their feed at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour coming back. The State of the Union is now going to occupy a lot of chatter and a lot of one-sided, quick, here's the clip, here's the soundbite, and everybody repeat. Leading into the State of the Union, Americans are questioning the sudden turn on CDC policy and states' policies regarding the mask mandates. And on the eve of the State of the Union address, the announcements, and then earlier this evening, the display of the nonsense, has many Americans going, did the science change or did the political science change? Normally the State of the Union is to a packed room and social distancing removed, or was it? The room seemed louder than normal. Was fake applause being piped in? Many on social media, on the Twitter feed in real time, observing it. Other observations were Nancy Pelosi's behavior, as well as Kamala Harris and Iranians. It wasn't Ukrainians, but you see Kamala. What? I know. And the nodding. Yep, that's right. That's right. What are you, flipper? What is this? I don't know. And if members of Congress are going to refuse to be there and they're going to be remote and they're going to do whatever, how do they have a job? And this turning your back and running away and walking out of the room. When did this childish behavior suddenly be applauded and lauded? for heroism, to stand up and pick up your toys and leave. How heroic. Boy, we called you a sissy and a wussy and a whole lot worse when you were a kid. Were you gonna cry and pick up your toys and run away and go home? Were you gonna call your mommy? God bless Louis Anderson. Rest in peace, Louis Anderson. Get out of here, he's getting his mom. She killed that bat yesterday. It's a great routine, Louis Anderson. As kids, you never ran home and got your dad. But these kids ran home, gave me, because mom will give me a muffin and a medal. Why did the gallery have empty seats? Again, State of the Unions, it's packed. What's with the empty seats? Even Jill Biden, Jill, you know, the one who announced that Kamala Harris was president of the United States the other day and then caught the gaffe and said it was a joke. I did that to make you laugh. No, Jill, no, no. Why empty seats in the gallery? This isn't the Academy Awards where you have a seat holder. Again, Nancy Pelosi is not in the moment. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's medical and pharmaceutical. I don't know if it's wine. I don't know if it's a combination thereof. I don't know if she's reptilian. I don't know. She ain't in the room. She ain't in the moment. Fumbling with papers and and what the hell was that? Starting his speech, State of the Union address, just going over an hour. First out of the gun, COVID. And then immediately jumping to his pride of the United States and 29 other nations in NATO about NATO's response regarding the unprecedented sanctions that are being put in place. And Joe promising and assuring the American people these sanctions will be targeted at the oligarchs and not the people of Russia, and not have it affect Americans. Joe continues to claim the powerful sanctions are choking Russian assets for years to come. Well, if what the initial accounts of, in fact, it's Russian people who are suffering, not the oligarchs, to say that tonight, that we're going to continue to choke the Russian assets for years to come, is a very powerful move in the wake of what if Vladimir Putin gets up tomorrow, comes back from a time travel journey, got a hug, and realizes what a mistake he made. Oh, they're going to suffer for years. Joe was very clear. No troops in the Ukraine. Joe was also very clear. We are going to defend our NATO allies with what? Unicorn dust? Joe talking about the possible impacts about Ukraine and the economy. He whispers into the microphone, "We're gonna be okay." Regarding Americans being hit at the gas pump, Joe Biden and the international community rallying together to provide 60 million barrels of oil. That's great, because the American country of America, you and I, we go through 20 million barrels of it a day. So 60 million barrels out of 20 million leaves 40 million day after tomorrow. And wow, what an impact it made. When Joe Biden brings up the American Rescue Plan as salvation and creating 6 million jobs, it's then noticed the sheer volume of the applause does not match the room. was television and the media manipulating the speech. Also, whitehouse.gov, you pay for that site. They live streamed the video. You weren't allowed to chat. You're not allowed to ask a question. You can't show your support. You can't show your mistrust. They just turn the comments off. Now, remember when there were other people in power and they tried to turn off comments or block, remember who went to which side. Joe says that our economy has grown the largest it has in 40 years under the first year of his watch as POTUS 46. Quote, America has seen, I almost giggled. We have seen the largest growth in the American economy in 40 years. He went on to say that our economy is coming back so fast, faster than anyone expected. He went on to blame and did not recognize it as transitory inflation or inflation here to stay. He said the inflation from last year, 30% of that was caused by cars. New cars and used cars and the demand for cars and the price of the car went up, and that's why inflation's so high. Okay. Joe, when talking about the cars and how much they cost and how much healthcare costs and how much pharmaceuticals cost and how much daycare costs, he wants to lower the costs, not your wages. Hear a lot of gaslighting going on. I hear a lot of campaign rhetoric. I'm not hearing the State of the Union. Joe Biden says he wants to build a better America. He wants investment for tax credits to combat climate change. If we're going to build back better, we got to give him a tax credit. He may have made this may be the death nail in the coffin for a re-election campaign for Joe Biden. Just like George H.W. Bush said, read my lips, no new taxes. Tonight at the State of the Union, 3/1/2022, Joe Biden said, if you make less than $400,000 a year, you won't pay a single penny more in taxes. Which watch do I set the date and the time? Joe talking about buying American, building American, investing in American, in one of the greatest underutilized assets, because Jill said so, community colleges. And if a company wants to start a union, they should be able to start a union. Go back in time right after the election and then when he got sworn in and how he bitch slapped the unions in just the oil and gas industry alone. Let alone manufacturing, let alone go look for yourself and go back at what the union leaders and representatives were saying back then. Because it's where my joke of ISWA comes from. Again, the speech went over an hour, but 48 minutes into the speech, I wrote, so far, 48 minutes into the speech on the State of the Union, his speech is all the things he wants to do. He's not taking responsibility or credit for what's happened, what he did. Also talking about is we're going to support the Ukraine and fund them with arms and humanitarian, not troops. He wants to talk about going after Americans' Second Amendment right. He wants to bring up the straw man of ghost guns and online transfers and online sales. He wants the high capacity magazine that starts with the 100 round drum and it gets down to the single shot 22. That's incrementalism. That's the camel toe under the tent. We've seen it time and time again. But now Joe Biden is pro America and he's pro union again. And he wants to fund the police. They need more money and better resources. Wow. And then here's what will establish his legacy. He wants to end cancer. Unlike President Kennedy, who said, we are going to go to the moon by the end of the decade and we're going to bring them back. We gave a goal, we gave a start and a finish, and we told them what we were going to achieve. So whether it's 42 years from now or 442 years from now, when we cure cancer, we get to credit Joe. He wants to end cancer and, like DARPA, he wants to create ARPA with an H. As in, holy what? ARPA. Like DARPA. Ooh, okay. Back on to the State of the Union. Continued demand for immigration reform. Using the Ukrainian refugee crisis to immigration reform without demanding for it and calling for it for legislation, but not laying out what we need out of that immigration reform. He did say the immigration reform was to save democracy because there's legislation out there that would destroy the right to vote. He says this is a great time for America. There's a crisis and we have the opportunity. America takes the challenge and we take a crisis and we turn it into opportunity. Well, that's the Hegelian dialect. Problem, reaction, solution. Excuse me. This is going to be quick. Those are the headlines. Those are the data points of Ukraine and Moldova and Russia and the State of the Union and just a few things Joe said. You don't feel well. So good. Give me a minute here. So, climate change and the crisis of climate change and the crisis in the Ukraine and the crisis at home with the escalating problems with crime and drugs and homelessness. And it's all crisis. And how lucky you are and thankful you should be for our leaders who are able to come together and gather in a meeting room and have a meeting about the crisis until somebody they don't like is on and they all pick up their toys and leave. Not all, those members who support her. That is not heroic and brave. That's chicken behavior, period. And you being applauded for picking up your toys and running away. That's bad. This continued hyperbole and hyping up a nuclear crisis that isn't. The media is ginning it up, claiming there are death squads and hit squads. Talking about the heroism of the women who've taken up arms for the media on the channel is just so irresponsible, and to commend the women who are doing it. But the ratio of men to women in the Ukraine who are taking up arms, this being applauded by the media who doesn't want you to be armed. Think about that. the narrative they're trying to spin versus what's being shown by, again, people on the ground with a device. Continued calls for blocking social media and for social media to be blocking people who are spreading misinformation. Misinformation defined by who? Reports now on CNN that potentially the COVID-19 virus may have a property of genetics that belonged to a Moderna patent application from 2014. Boy, that was a major no-no to talk about a conspiracy theory of anything coming from a lab. This came from a wet market. What's next of the things we can talk about or can't talk about? Because here's what's frightening now in the States, that we're so omnipresent with making you keep a mask on as the CDC has changed their guidelines. Going out and talking to the people on the street, they're uncomfortable taking their mask off. They don't feel safe yet. Okay. By the way, if they choose to keep a mask on, you can't bully and shame them. We should have legislation for bullying and shaming. What the hell did you do to people for 2 years who didn't have a tampon shoved in their mouth? Wow. The gaslighting flip that is taking place in real time in these headlines should have all of you concerned, depending upon which side of the aisle you're getting your headlines from. Where's your mask? Get out of my store and fuck you and throwing chairs and. But if you have your own, you don't you dare say anything to me. That's bullying, and I'm gonna call the police, and you're gonna be arrested. Creating a crisis, so you demand, because you've reacted, you want a solution, and lo and behold, there they are to give it to you. Hillary Clinton on Twitter earlier this evening said that she was glad that President Biden is at the helm. She's confident, secure, knowing our world is secure in the hands of Joe Biden. Then why are you out yapping, blaming the bad man, and already starting to lay the groundwork for your return to the campaign trail again? And if they're really, are we really going to observe this like professional wrestling, and that we're going to have Trump and Clinton again? And yet, how many people want that? Allegedly, according to the polls, more people want that than want President Biden as President Biden. Who knows what to believe anymore? I don't know. If you know, shoot me an email, shoot me an instant message. Add me as a friend on social media. Follow me on Twitter. If you like what I'm talking about, you want to help this product get better, need a better microphone. There's a bunch of stuff I need, but just internet, a solid stream of internet is $1,000 a year. So I started a Patreon. Support my Patreon. Somebody just give me internet free for a year so I can plug in the Cat 5. Because again, the old studio, we had to have T1s just to run the Zephyr. Now you just need a solid internet connection. But I'm going to see all of you 1 a.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Mountain every night through the crisis. Because they're loving to attach that word now to everything. And we have the nuclear option when it comes to the war on terror and the war on crime and the war on homelessness and the war on poverty and the war on children. What war on children? Stand by. We'll come up for a reason to come up with that phrase. The war on education. I thought I could. I'm so again, Don't believe a word I said. I got up, I stayed up late, and I got up early, and I made up quotes. That's all I do. I just make it up. Make it up as I go along. I miss the zeros and heroes. The Superman theme, go to the San Francisco Gate Weird News section, pull 3 at random, and just riff. I miss those days. Don't miss me again. Follow along, subscribe, add as a friend, follow, stalk, do what you gotta do. If you appreciate the news, the data points, share it with your friends. I will see all of you tomorrow night, if not sooner, because as it is now, coming out of the dawn into the early light, are we going to see another alleged surge? Because for 96 hours they said Kiev. Oh, that was why. Kiev. Kiev is about to fall. Kiev is under siege. Kiev. Allegedly. It's how the people in Ukraine say it. I've talked to some, Gen 2 and Gen 1, yeah, and Gen 3 and 4. Okay, when a Russian says Kiev, it's considered a racial slur. What? We call the country, capital city, Kiev, out of solidarity for the people of Kiev. Can I say hi to everybody in Deutschland and Nippon and España? How about Persia? See, I laugh. To suggest that saying Kiev is a racial slur. Everybody's been asking for 2 weeks why we come up with Kiev. Give them that answer. Do you realize how empathetic you are to even suggest that? That Ukrainians are somehow racially different from Russians? And that saying Kiev is a racial slur? What is wrong with you? Get out and get some UV, get some sun, get some air, get some exercise. Be well, be safe, be skeptical, be concerned for this great planet that they are driving us into a place that we can't get out of because they're resolute in their condemnations. Until next time, be well, be safe. Well, that didn't work. We're still live. There we go. Good night, everybody.